So I am excited to preach today about Commandments 5 and 6. So we've been doing this series on the 10 Commandments. I'm going to take a little bit of time to set some groundwork. Pastor Joe did a really good job of introducing some of the commandments and the way that we need to understand them. And I know there's a lot of kids in the sanctuary today, and some of them might be upset. Don't mind them. We love them. They are welcome to stay in the sanctuary, okay? All right. Today's all about dedicating these kids to the Lord, and what a powerful thing. Like, what an honor to be able to pray over families. And I think it's actually sort of a timely message because commandment number 5 is to honor your mother and father. And so we're going to talk about what that means, but before we do that, I want us to change our minds a little bit about the way that we view God's commandments. A lot of times we came from a religious tradition and we see God's commandments as a burden, as just a list of rules of do's and don'ts. And if you read the King James Version, it's always thou shalt not, whatever. Did the old Charlton Heston movie have God's voice and thou shalt not, right? Do that whole thing. And so we get this impression that God is a mean God. He's angry, he's judgmental, and someone to be afraid of. And not to say that we shouldn't fear God, but I think we should look at a different approach to the commandments. And if you guys remember last week, Pastor Joe mentioned how many commandments are in the Torah, the law of Moses. 613. Now, Myrna, can you stand up and recite 600? No, you can't do that. So traditionally, there's 613 commandments, but how can we remember all these commandments? How do we remember what to do? Again, poor Myrna could just remember 613, and I think that's a lot of us, right? It's just hard to remember every single thing that God commanded us to do. But what we see in the 10 Commandments is that we have 613 commandments, but God gave them to us in what I would call the Big 10. And so the 10 Commandments are described in more detail amongst the 613. Does that make sense? So when God says, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, well, that's kind of vague. We need to know the details of what does it mean to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And there are commandments within the 613 that give us that description, okay? That makes sense? Okay. Now, Jesus, when he was asked by the religious leaders of his day, what is the greatest commandment, he takes 613 that can be summed up into 10, and he sums them up into 2. And Jesus he had a way about him where he was very loving and compassionate to the unbeliever. But to the religious leaders who should have known better, Jesus can come off a little bit like insulting or kind of mean, a little bit rude. It's kind of funny to me because we always have this impression of Jesus as this loving, like, almost like he's like a hippie, right? Like, free hugs. Bro, like, just chill, man. Like, why are you getting all crazy? Just love everyone. But when he's talking to the religious people, we see a little bit of a different Jesus. And so they come to him, they say, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says in Matthew chapter 22, if I could have it, there we go. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as you love yourself. All the law and all the prophets depend on these 2 commandments. So Jesus, again, they ask him, all right, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And I think they're doing it with the intention of tricking him. And Jesus says, I don't like your game. I'll give you 2. Like, I don't care for this exchange. I don't care to prove anything to you. What I do care about is fulfilling God's commandments. And he gives us a breakdown of love God and love people. So the first 4 commandments, I think, could fall under the category of love God. The last 6 commandments will fall under the category of love people. And notice what Jesus says. He says, all the law and all the prophets depend on these 2. So Jesus is showing us that everything that we see in the Old Testament depends on our love for God and our love for people. So if we keep the Sabbath out of obligation, but we don't do it to love God and to love our fellow men, did we really keep the Sabbath? We might have gone through the motions, but we're missing what some people would call the spirit of the law, right? The spirit of what it means to keep God's holy day, the Sabbath. And so I shared this in the last service, and I'll share it because there's no time limit, and I can talk as long as I want to, right? Stephen, are those doors locked? Make sure they're locked. Yeah, okay. So Jesus is really revealing something that was really part of the rich culture of first century Judaism. It actually goes before the time of Jesus and before the time of the Apostle Paul. And so I'm getting nerdy with you guys. Stay with me. If you don't remember this, it's okay. It's fun for me to explain it to you. So in the book of Acts, we see that Paul the Apostle was trained by a famous rabbi named Gamaliel. Gamaliel's grandfather was named Hillel. And during the time of Hillel, there were 2 famous rabbis with sort of opposing opinions on how we should approach the scriptures. Hillel was more of the type to look at more the spirit of the law and to approach the law with grace and compassion and love. Whereas Shammai, he's the other famous rabbi, was more about the letter of the law. He was more about strict observance, and if you break even the littlest part of the law, you're going to hell or whatever. I don't know. And so there's this legend in ancient Judaism where a Gentile, a non-believing person, comes to Shammai and he says, if you can stand on one foot and teach me all the law of Moses, I will convert to your religion. And Shammai was like, dude, you're crazy. He gets a stick and he beats the guy out of his house. That's actually how the story goes. And then so the guy comes to Hillel and he asks this question. He says, if you can stand on one foot and teach me all of the Torah, all of the law of Moses, I will convert to your religion. And Hillel stands on one foot and he says, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. The rest is commentary. Now go and study it. And so what I want you to see from that is this came before the time of Paul, before the time of Jesus. And here we have Jesus saying something so similar. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, because everything that is written depends on those 2 things. And then in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul says in Galatians 5:14, all the law has been fulfilled in a single statement, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So what I'm trying to get you guys to understand today is that we cannot approach the 10 Commandments without understanding they are an expression of our love for God and our love for humanity. Let me say it this way. You cannot love God and hate people. You cannot love God and hate anyone. God is love. That's what the Bible says. And so we can't look at God's commandments as a burden and a list of do's and don'ts. We really have to see these commandments as loving instructions from a heavenly Father to his children. We all have instructions for our kids, right, parents? Like you can't just eat all the cookies all at once, right? You can't just walk around the neighborhood unattended when you're too young, right? You can't cross 83rd Avenue walking. I drive on 83rd Avenue. You should not cross 83rd Avenue walking, okay? And really, maybe not even driving. But why? Do we give those instructions because we just want to like be a bummer on their good time? Well, sometimes. But no, it's to protect them. We set barriers because we want them to experience the fullness of life. God gives us 10 commandments so that you can experience the fullness of the life that he created you to live. So it's not just a list of do's and don'ts, but this is loving instructions from your heavenly Father so that you can live the life he's called you to live. In 1 John 5:3, the apostle says, loving God means keeping his commandments. See, if we define love however we want to, we'll say, well, I love God, but I don't need to go to church. I love God, but I don't need to give offering or help the poor or any of those things. I'm not trying to show off, right? I love God, but whatever it is, here the apostle is saying you can't do that. Because God only interprets love one way, is that you keep the instructions that he gave the children that he loves. And he goes on to saying his commandments are not burdensome. So when we look at the commandments of God, we're approaching them as an expression of love for God and love for humanity. And that's when they don't become a burden anymore. See, when we're doing it out of obligation, it's a burden to keep the Sabbath. It's a burden to be generous to people. It's a burden to be patient with people. But when we love God and in turn love people, the burden of doing those things, man, it's a joy to be generous. It's a pleasure to be in church. It brings me joy to have an opportunity to minister to people in patience and love and kindness. Amen. And so that brings us to the first of the 2 commandments that we're studying today. Commandment number 5, honor your father and mother. And all the parents in the house said, amen. That's right, amen. Yep. You guys who brought your kids in that are old enough to know what I'm saying right now, listen up. Honor your father and mother. What does that mean to honor your father and mother? I think most people would say that it means to respect. Eyes up here, guys. That it means to respect them and maybe to obey them, right? But I think there's a lot more to it than that, and we get kind of a hint of this in the book of Exodus. Exodus 20:12 says that we are to love or honor your father and your mother, and then it comes with a promise so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. It comes with a promise. You honor your father and mother, and you get longer life and some more blessing. That's pretty cool. But it's crazy because this is the only commandment where God attaches a promise to it. And this is just me being silly, but I kind of feel like God needed to incentivize this commandment, like you will get a bonus if you do this one, right? As if he knew we wouldn't do it without, you'll live longer and you'll be blessed. Come on, please. But it comes with this promise. And I have a hard time believing that just respect and obedience gets us longer life and more blessing. I think there's more to it than that, and I think we can find that in Jesus' teachings in Matthew chapter 15. Jesus, again, is approached by religious leaders of his day, and he's being asked, why don't you follow God's commandments the way we follow God's commandments? And these pious religious people are like, why does your faith look different than our faith? Don't you know our customs and our traditions and the things that we believe makes us righteous? And again, this is not hippie Jesus. This is tell it like it is Jesus, okay? And look at how he responds to them. He says, why do you break the commandments of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. So I don't know about you guys, that seems a little too harsh. Disrespect your parents and you get the death penalty. And it's just, really? I said in one of the last services, I never got killed for dishonoring my parents, but my mom came really close a few times. And she's a Mexican woman, and you guys all know the Mexican chancla, right? Here's the thing, Irma Penn leveled up. My mom's too fancy for chanclas. She wore heels. And if she was shoeless and cooking, you got a wooden spoon, a spatula, a pan, whatever's closest to her. But just dishonoring your parents will bring you the death penalty. Jesus goes on to say, but you say that if anyone declares, previous slide, but you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is devoted to God, they are not to honor their father or mother with it. Thus, you nullify the word of God for the sake of your traditions. And so what the people of Jesus' time would do is they had this word called korban, and it really meant in Hebrew offering. And they would take their resources that they should have been using to take care of their parents in old age, and they would call it korban, but it's an offering to God, so I can't use it to help my parents. And so Jesus is saying, by this tradition, you're nullifying the commandment to honor your father and mother, because in their culture, in their day, honoring your father and mother not only meant respect, not only meant obedience, but that we are to take care of our parents when they get to the age that they can no longer take care of themselves. That's really what it means. And all of us are going to get to that age. And if you think you're not going to, you're in denial. And you can come to CR on Friday nights. We got a 12-step program for your denial. But we brought kids into this world, but there's going to come a time where we can no longer take care of ourselves. And I hope that they will honor God and honor us enough to take care of us when we can no longer take care of ourselves. And so Jesus he's giving us the context here is honoring your father and mother isn't just respect, not just obedience, but it's loving your parents when they can no longer take care of themselves. Does that make sense? And so these people, they took this tradition of, they're trying to look pious and religious and say, okay, I have the resources to take care of my parents, but rather I'm going to offer it to God so that it can only be used as offering to God. And in that way, they dishonored their parents and they dishonored God. And here's the thing, what I want you to notice that this verse of scripture doesn't say is it doesn't say honor your father and mother because they were good parents. It doesn't say honor your father and mother because they were just so good at raising you. No, it has to do with matters of the heart. And I know that as I'm talking about this, some of you guys are remembering traumas and things of abuse, maybe parents that neglected you, maybe parents that hurt you physically or were abusing drugs or completely abandoned you. And that's hard. I don't take anything away from the difficult experience that you had, but let me tell you that you're going to have to get to a place where you can free yourself from those hurts, and you need to be able to honor them because of the God who loves you. Jesus goes on to say, you hypocrites. Remember, these are religious people. He says, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. See, to honor our parents, we're going to have to take care of them when they can no longer take care of themselves. My dad's a white guy from the Midwest. My mom's Hispanic from Arizona. Her parents were from Mexico. I actually crossed the border in the long time ago. And I don't know how it is in other cultures, but I'll tell you this. When my grandma was sick and could no longer take care of herself, in our Mexican family, I don't know a person that didn't step up to the plate. And I remember in those last few years of my Nana's life that everybody stepped up and took care of her. And it wasn't an issue, it wasn't a question that this is what we're supposed to do, because we are all living because of this woman's life. And I believe that God, part of loving people is to give back to them what they gave you. The honor and the dignity of living their last days unabandoned, with company. We were all in the hospital when my Nana was dying. And I don't think that she was ever there suffering in her last moments of life without somebody by her side. That's what it means to honor your father and to honor your mother. Amen? So again, we don't do it because they are so honorable. Has nothing to do with how they treated you. In fact, it doesn't even take away from maybe the hurts that you've experienced. In Ephesians, the Apostle Paul says, "Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do." See, that's why you do it. No other reason to honor your father and mother other than you know the Lord, you belong to him, and it is the right thing to do. He says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have long life on the earth. And so I want to go back to this idea of why does God promise us long life and blessing when we take care of our parents when they can no longer take care of themselves. If I remember back to when my family had to take care of my Nana, that took immense sacrifice. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of resources. And quite honestly, it was really, really inconvenient. That meant that some of us couldn't do the things we wanted to do. It meant we missed out on opportunities and we couldn't buy stuff. Our time was, and our resources were spent taking care of her. And I believe that God promises long life and blessing through this commandment because what you gave in time and what you gave in resources, God is going to give back to you. I believe that. I believe when we make the sacrifice to honor our parents and honor God, that God is going to give back to you what was lost during that time. In Ephesians, the Apostle Paul continues to say, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. All you parents with babies in here, perk up your ears real quick. Pay attention. Because it's one thing to want our kids to honor us, but the Apostle Paul is giving us great advice here. By the way you raise your children, do not provoke them to anger by the way that you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. You guys all got 2 great books. I know that it's difficult sometimes to know how to pray with kids, to know how to teach them. As far as I know, none of you guys went to a seminary or theology class, all right? So you might not know the Bible, but you have a book where you can read a story to them every day of the year. And I'm going to give you a little bit of grace here. You don't even have to know the meaning of the story. Give yourself the grace to learn it with your kids. Amen? Amen. Sometimes in church we make too big a deal about knowing everything, and it's not what it's about. It's just doing it and being faithful to teach them. You guys have another book that will teach you how to parent, and the reminder in the honey that the Word of God is sweet. It makes life good. Amen? It says, bring them up in the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. This is what it means to honor our mother and father. Let's move to the 6th commandment. You shall not murder. Now, I think God just has a sense of humor and was like, honor your father and mother, and please don't kill them. Like, just, please. I created them, don't kill them. And if we remember what the commandment was, it's to take care of our parents, right? It doesn't mean take care of your parents, all right? So it's you want to honor them. So in the King James Version of the Bible, it'll read, "Thou shalt not kill." I think that's a mistranslation of the word that we find here in this scripture, because there are times in the Bible where God, he says, don't kill, but then he sends Israel off to war. And I don't know if I'm missing something, but I don't know how to do war without killing. And so it actually doesn't say do not kill, it says do not murder. And so murder is the premeditated, killing of an innocent human life. Premeditated killing of an innocent human life. So this commandment, we're really supposed to understand from it that we're to preserve human life because human life is sacred. And it's not something that we should take lightly, and we shouldn't ever aim to harm or act in violence towards another human being. And if murder is the unlawful killing of a human life, then what is the lawful killing of a human life? And we can see that maybe that is necessary in times of war, self-defense, or maybe like things like capital punishment, right? We kind of all understand that. None of those things are good. They're all very ugly, but sometimes they're necessary. And so we want to preserve human life, and in Genesis 1:26, we see God say, "Let us make humanity in our image to resemble us, so that they may take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and all the crawling things on earth." It says that God created humanity in God's own image. In the divine image, God created them, male and female, he created them. And so why do we not murder innocent life? Because innocent life is sacred. Human life is sacred. Why? Because we were all created in the image of God. Like it or not, the person that you don't like was created in the image of God. Like it or not, the person of another belief system or religion or ideology or worldview was created in God's image. That atheist person that gets on your nerves because they constantly argue that your faith is false was created in the image of God. And so they're supposed to be treated with dignity and respect. And we preserve human life. But I was thinking about this, if that's one of the top 10 commandments, then I feel like I'm doing pretty good because I have not murdered anyone in the almost 36 years of life on this earth. And to be honest, I'm kind of a non-threatening guy, right? Like, I'm not real buff or strong. I can't run fast. I have bad aim. I'm kind of clumsy. So, I'm doing pretty good, at the not murdering people, right? Because who's going to be threatened by Michael Penn, really? But I think there's more, again, to this commandment than just not killing innocent life. And we see more of this context in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. Jesus says, "You have heard that our ancestors were told, 'You must not murder.' If you commit murder, you are subject to judgment. But I say," Jesus is adding to what should be understood here, "if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. If you call someone an idiot, you are in danger of being brought before the court. And if you curse someone, you are in danger of the fires of hell." Now, again, Jesus, are you over-exaggerating a little bit? It seems like it, right? It's like, really, if I call someone an idiot, I'm going to hell? If that's true, then we should not even be coming to church on Sunday. Let's just stop trying, wrap it up. And we know where we're going, right? It seems like an exaggeration. He says, if you even insult someone. And again, I think what Jesus is doing is showing us the deeper meaning of what it means to not murder somebody. Because, again, if it just means don't kill another person, then I'm righteous. As far as I know of, there was that time on the 10 where I thought I hit a speed bump, but then I was like, why are there speed bumps on the freeway? No, I'm just kidding. But truthfully, It's easy for most of us to not kill an innocent life. It's like a no-brainer. But notice what Jesus is saying. He says, I say that if you're even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. If you call someone an idiot or you curse them, he says, you're in danger of the fires of hell. And let me tell you why. Is because murder doesn't just happen. It's not something that we accidentally fall into. Murder is premeditated. It's festering. It's ruminating in our heart and in our mind. You ever have someone frustrate you so bad that for a split second you think, I could do this and nobody would know? Or even if you haven't, we've all thought, man, if you just weren't in my life, life would be a lot easier. If I could just cut you off. And here's the thing, though. That anger, that resentment, that unforgiveness, those intentions and words about other people is what will lead eventually to murder. And so Jesus is saying you're in danger of the fires of hell if you don't take care of the anger, the resentment, and the unforgiveness in your heart. If you allow your mind and your emotions to take you to that place, you might do something that you'll regret for the rest of your life. And oftentimes it's just with our words. We can look at murder as tearing down someone else's reputation. You know, Christians are very bad at this and very guilty of this, I think, because Christians, we operate and we live in this Christian bubble of the community called the church. And when everything's going good, we get bored and we have to talk about someone else behind their back. And it's, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? And you're murdering that person's reputation and their image before their fellow brother or sister in Christ. See, this is something that Jesus is saying, not murdering isn't just an issue of don't kill innocent life. It's an issue of the heart. Watch your intentions. Watch your words and your thoughts about your brother and sister. Watch what you say. See, Jesus, when we honor our father and mother, he promises life and blessing, but when we curse people, we're in danger of the fires of hell. This is very, very serious. God, we cannot love God and hate people. You can't. You can't love God and hate someone because they're different than you. We don't like to get political here at Grace Walk because honestly, I don't think you can legislate revival. It's something that only God can do, and so our political positions really don't matter. But let me ask you, Republicans, can you love a Democrat? Honestly. Conservatives, can you love progressives? Democrats, can you love Republicans? Because let me tell you this, before I am American and before I am Mexican, I'm a Christian first. And my relationship with God is what informs the way that I should treat other people. And those barriers of culture and ideology and things, really, they don't matter when it comes to the kingdom of heaven. You can't love God and hate people. You love God by loving other people. Amen? Last service I asked, can libertarians love anyone? And no, they can't. They're just mad at everyone, and they don't even agree on their own political view. I'm saying that as a person who sort of leans that way. So if you're a libertarian, let's get together and argue sometime. The Apostle Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, he says, therefore, as God's choice, holy and loved, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Be tolerant with one another. And if someone has a complaint against anyone, forgive each other. As the Lord forgave you, so also forgive each other. And over all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Now, this is Black History Month, and I think of our history as a nation where there was a time where hate was something that was normalized. And not that we've done away with hate or prejudice or racism, but geez, we've come a long way. And I love that at Grace Walk Church, I look out in this congregation, it's all walks of life here. Because regardless of our background, our culture, our life experiences, our age, we do have this one thing in common. Saved by grace, the blood of Jesus, amen? So let's act with love towards one another. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus goes to say, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift at the altar and go. First make things right with your brother or sister, and then come back and offer your gift. This is an absolutely wild idea to me, because what Jesus is saying here is that God prioritizes you reconciling relationships more than he wants you to worship him. He says, if you come and you bring worship to me, but you have unforgiveness, hate, or resentment against someone else, you need to deal with that before you approach me. God is saying, you're forgiving that person that you don't like is more important than your worship to me. And let me tell you why. Because when we can forgive, that's what makes the worship that we bring to God true. God does not care about you wearing your Sunday best. He does not care how high you lift your hands, how loud you sing, and how well you sit and listen to the word. What he cares about is how you love him by loving other people. And when you can do that, it makes coming to church, lifting our hands, singing to him mean something. God doesn't care about a show of religious pretense. He doesn't care if we don't love each other. Look at what the prophet says in Amos chapter 5. This is God speaking through the prophet. He says, I hate all your show and pretense. God is saying the hypocrisy of your religious festivals and solemn assemblies, I will not accept your burnt offerings and the grain offerings. I won't even notice all your choice and peace offerings. Away with your noisy hymns of praise. We had great worship this morning. And I can't imagine that I came to God with stuff in my heart and gave him all of that praise for him to say it's just noise because you don't forgive. He goes on to say, away with your noisy hymns of praise. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Instead, I want to see a mighty flood of justice and an endless river of righteous living. God cares about the matters of our heart. And God forbid that we go another Sunday on this series of the 10 Commandments and don't realize that it needs to be approached with love. Love God, love people, honor your father and mother, and stop those negative intentions of the heart and the mind. Stop speaking bad words about other people, because it's the same as murder. We need to love each other, have compassion, not just tolerate people, but truly love them the way that God has loved us. Amen? Let's bow our heads and close our eyes. Let's be in an attitude of prayer. In a few moments, I'm going to count to 3. And if you came to Grace Walk today and you want to give your life to God, I'm going to ask you when I get to 3 to raise your hand. It is just a sign of surrender. Just, God, I just need you in my life. But maybe you came to Grace Walk today and you are holding some anger and resentment, some unforgiveness. It could be against a parent. It could be against an old friend, a family member, a brother or sister, a church, a pastor. We're going to give you the same opportunity at the end of 3. I want you to raise your hand and just say, God, I want to be relieved of that burden. 1, 2, 3. Amen. If you're watching online, just raise your hand right where you are. You guys can go ahead and put those hands down. I'm going to lead you guys in a prayer, and even if you didn't raise your hand, please say this prayer just to support those who did. Say, Heavenly Father, I give you my life. I know I'm a sinner, but I believe that Jesus died for my sins. Come into my heart. Change me. I believe that Jesus rose from the dead, that I can have new life. Empower me to live the life you have called me to live, and fill me with your Holy Spirit. Let's just keep our heads down for a second. If you're thinking of someone, either dead or living, it doesn't matter, that you have held anger towards, resentment and unforgiveness, right now, we're going to say a prayer to lift that burden off of you, because I believe that when we hang on to those things, we do not experience the fullness of God's joy and his presence and his will in our lives. And so right now, just think about that person or persons that you need to forgive this morning, because we're going to walk out of this church free from resentment, from anger. Right now, say these words, Heavenly Father, I release this burden of anger and unforgiveness. By the power of your Holy Spirit, give me the courage and the strength to forgive those who have sinned against me. I walk free from that burden by the power of the blood of Jesus. Amen. Let's give God a clap offering this morning.